What is up, everyone? Welcome. We are hanging out on stream. We're going to look at not only Kijyo Kōyō, the dinosaur waifu coming out to NA very soon, but Voyager as well. They are coming up on the Fate Requiem banner. If you're interested in learning about these, if you're curious as to whether or not you should roll on them, trying to find out about their kit, whatever it is, hang out, get comfy. We will go through them in detail, do some comparisons, etc., etc. If you like this content and similar content, we do a lot of servant analysis here lately. I think we're going to keep doing it. It's been pretty comfy. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe. For now, let's go ahead and dive into these two servants. First up is going to be Kijyo Kōyō. So Kijyo Kōyō is interesting for one very obvious reason. Dinosaur. You can have an actual dinosaur on the field. For a lot of people, including myself, that's enough reason to try and get a copy of Kijyo Kōyō. The second sprite is a much more reserved Shrine Maiden, and the third is a bit of an amalgamation of both, right? Honestly, like, conceptually a very cool servant, but how do they stack up comparatively? How do they stack up as a berserker? So Kijyo has a triple buster deck, 3 hits on the buster card, 5 hits on the extra. You always love to see that. It is a single target buster NP with 10 hits. 10 hits, remember that, that's important. She does inflict burn to herself for 500 damage for 3 turns. Honestly, 500 for 3 turns isn't the worst thing. It's annoying, but it's not the worst thing. And then 600 to 1,000 standard scaling. This could get a buff in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't, but I wouldn't really be either way, just because the attack up overcharge is what activates first. 20% is fairly healthy. That's fairly healthy on the overcharge. Going through her kit here, her star absorption as a berserker is laughably low. It is 9. To go through some of the other ones in her class, so we have Lubu. Lubu is going to be used comparatively speaking because he is a triple buster F2P option. Beowulf is another 4-star triple buster, and then Ibaraki, once again, triple buster, 4-star berserker. The star absorption across the class for berserker is always going to be low. It's always going to be low. A base star absorption of 10 for the class, so she's right there, a little bit below, same as Spartacus at 9. Either way, they're not going to soak up stars naturally, right? A neutral evil alignment is actually going to be pretty beneficial for some fights. It's going to be interesting to work with some servants, one of which is going to be talked about later on. So all in all, the substats, like the sort of hidden stats, don't really like sway you one way or another. They're just kind of there, right? Pretty standard for a berserker class. Attack wise, she is a little bit lower than HP. Obviously, she's not Mao Nobu. I mean, that's just going to be the case. But it's not the worst thing in the world. It's a little bit low, but it's not the worst thing. As a berserker, you kind of expect to see that. Going on down through her skills here, she has defense up for 3 turns, 20 to 30% on a 5-turn cooldown, so 2 turns of downtime is not terrible. But star absorption for 1 turn, 3,000 to 5,000%. That is fantastic scaling. Really, really, really good scaling. And as you heard me earlier, this 10-hit NP does play a part in that. 10-hit NP does play a part, right? So on the NP, we potentially have the ability to create some stars. And the star absorption is here as well. It's only 1 turn, but it's better than no turns, right? On the second skill, it's buster up and quick up for 3 turns. It's for herself. 20 to 30%, not the greatest scaling, and 6 turns, so it's whatever, it's fine. And then there's 1 ally's NP overcharge, 1 stage, 3 turns. Sorry, 1 stage, 1 time over 3 turns. If you apply that to herself, she's going to get 25% attack at base overcharge using this skill, right? Alright, fine, cool. On the third skill, it's party HP recovery 1,000 to 2,000, 6-turn cooldown. Removing 1 latest debuff from the party, and then instant kill immunity for 3 turns. That has, if we're being honest, limited usage, especially now that the fantastically fun Gouda Final Hinoji event is coming to a close, where instant death is a factor in, like, what, 2 fights? So either way, it's not like the biggest deal in the world. As a kit overall, this is one of the more persona geared kits in the game, in my opinion. if you know about Fate Requiem, if you know about Kijyo Kōyō in Fate Requiem, I'm not going to spoil it at all. We do have it in our Discord if you want to read it in English. Volume 1, that is, before the event or even during. She's very interesting. Her master is very interesting. And the common values that they share kind of speak to the guardianship, let's say, of this, but also still being able to hit hard as hell, right? So the defense up for 3 turns, 20 to 30%. I'm of the opinion that there's not a whole lot you can give to a Berserker for basic defense skills that are really going to change like the outcome of their survivability one way or another. Namely, if it's defense below like 50%, it's probably not going to make a demonstrable difference in their survivability. This is no different at 20 to 30%. But the reason you level this skill, if I'm being honest, is for the star absorption. This is a really, really strong scaling. It's very, very good. And it's more than enough that if you are running a double caster support team around Kijyo, let's say you're doing like a challenge quest or a boss fight, it's more than enough to outbalance the casters around her. So pretty good skill there, pretty good skill there. On the second skill, it's nice that this is 3 turns. Quicken Buster up, not bad at all. And it gives her access to multiplicative damage on her attack up with her NP, right? Not bad at all. The overcharge up 1 stage, 1 time, 3 turns is interesting because it does help those who are supporting her to support her even better. The first one that comes to mind for me personally is going to be Merlin. Merlin's overcharge is very nice here. With not only her class, but the capabilities that she needs, right? On the third skill, though, it's where it gets really deep into the lore aspect, the persona aspect. The party HP recovery is fine. It's okay. But when you combine this with the defense up, it looks like a strong defensive kit. It looks like someone who could prolong a fight. This is a Berserker. It's a Berserker. You're not really gonna change a ton of the outcome of the fight survivability wise just by having, you know, a 1000 to 2000 heal every 6 turns plus defense up for 3 turns on her. The way you would do this is target focus away from her. Merlin with invincibles, Castorias, like those kinds of things. HP recovery and defense up are not really going to change the tide here. So not the strongest kit you've ever seen. Personally, it's kind of like they go kind of down the middle between defense and offense on here, right? So the star absorption is very nice, but there's no crit up. That would have been nice to have. Obviously, a lot of support servants can give her crit up, especially now that nearly everyone has a waiver if they wanted a waiver after the ticket is gone. But you do have Buster up. That's nice. The attack up on the NP is also nice. One other thing, and this is something to consider more and more as we go forward. The third append skill for Berserkers is almost universally terrible. It's almost universally terrible. So, critical attack chance resistance against saber enemies. It's laughably awful. And so the only real append skill you're gonna look at is gonna be her second one. Obviously, that's mono loading. She does not have a battery of her own. So what does this mean as a kit, right? So on the surface value, it's a triple buster Berserker. That's fine. That's good. With the ability to soak up stars. Cool. Good. And hit harder with face cards on Buster and Quick. A single Quick card, so that's kind of a weird inclusion there. We do not have crit up. The attack up is tied to her NP. The good thing is that it is a 3-turn attack up, so it does improve the viability of usage over a long fight. But outside of that, it's kind of an erratic kit. It doesn't commit one way or another. At least with someone like an Ibaraki Doji, who also has, on this third skill here, defense up 30%. It's a single turn, and then the further defense for 3 turns is nice to have, because it's 60% for a single turn. That's pretty strong. You can time that. It does make a difference. The second skill removes all of her own debuffs. It's not one from everyone. The one latest one, I should say. It's all of her own. Not to mention this weird buff that she gets in the future, which is, hey, I'm Shuten Doji's biggest fan, but that's neither here nor there. It does have 100%, 50 to 100% crit up in Ibaraki Doji's kit. Like, that's really good. It's really good. And then the first skill, party attack up 3 turns, NP damage up as well for 3 turns. And of course she has madness enhancement, 8%, so that's a buster buff right there as well. She can remove all of an enemy's buffs, 600 to 1,000, standard scaling as well. Defense reduction is the same as attack up. So if I have to make a direct comparison, Ibaraki's just going to come out on top. So if you have an Ibaraki and you don't typically roll for all servants, or you don't really care about Kijyo, you're probably not going to need to roll for her. From a straight up one-to-one comparison, Ibaraki just outpaces her, and Ibaraki has been out for a long enough time that you might have Ibaraki. However, Ibaraki, in all her forms, is not a dinosaur. So, again, I'm still going to roll for Kijyo on my main account. My quick account will be rolling for Voyager, so probably we'll get Kijyo anyway. But yeah, this is the kind of servant that you probably are not rolling to get them from a gameplay perspective. Like, let's just be honest. You're probably not waking up one morning and saying to yourself, hey, this servant right here is going to change the fate of my account, no pun intended. It's going to absolutely break the game open. No, it's not going to do that. It's not going to do that. You're rolling because it's a dinosaur, and that's cool. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. As far as how you're going to get that dinosaur up and running, from a materials perspective, it starts off pretty reasonable up here. The Ascensions are not the worst thing. 15 is not the worst for a bronze mat. On an Ascension mat, it's not the worst thing, right? But then we head down here, and oh, sweet lord. It gets steep. It gets steep. 30 of these Dragon Fangs per skill. And then 20 of the Giant's Rings. If you farm for Scotty, then you are no stranger to needing a bunch of these Giant's Rings, right? Weirdly enough, 8 Tsukumo Mirrors is not super steep to me. I don't really know why. I can't justify that. But this is a lot of Dragon Fangs per skill. And if you take a look at her kit, if you're actually going to use her in a high level team, you do need her cooldowns. You need her cooldowns as small as possible. Because although the defense up for 3 turns is not necessarily going to change the outcome of a fight, most likely, the star absorption is extremely strong. It's extremely strong. And because her star weight is among the lowest in the game, then you really do need to get this 5-turn threshold down there, right? With her second skill, the overcharge NP for one ally one time over 3 turns is interesting. Again, it really speaks to the types of supports that can be put with her, and how much utility you can get out of them. The quick and buster performance up is not bad either. The 3 turns of downtime, it's not bad. This is a decent skill, but you really do, again, need to have a 6-turn total cooldown instead of 8, right? You really do need 3 turns of downtime instead of 5. Because as a Berserker, you cannot have the fight last into like 8 turns, 9 turns, 10 turns. And if you do, you need to have a solid strategy for keeping her alive. On the third skill here, this is the one that probably should go last if you're leveling skills in a certain order. The party HP recovery 1000 to 2000, like that's fine. That's okay, it's whatever. That's 5 turns of downtime between heals though. And the latest debuff removal is gimmicky enough that sometimes it'll work fantastically and sometimes it will let you down, depending on the debuffs that have been applied to your party members. The insta-kill immunity is you could take it or leave it. That's almost never going to be helpful for you, right? So, on the whole, interesting, fun, kind of gimmicky, someone that you'll need to go out of your way to make use of. A little bit expensive on the skills, especially when you consider the fact that you're going to want those first 2 skills to be at a high level. Maybe not max, but pretty close if you can help it, and you're going to use her a lot. One thing to note, this is interesting to me, maybe not to other people, but I always like to look at bond CEs for new servants. For Kijyo Kōyō, it's one of the worst in the game in my opinion. Just from a usage perspective, quicken Buster up by 10% while she's on the field. There is 0% of all battles that this will be your go-to CE. Some bond CEs are useful. This is one of the least useful bond CEs that you could possibly put out there. I'm not trying to just like rag unnecessarily. I do like to look at bond CEs. It doesn't factor in for whether or not I'll roll for a servant, but it's nice, you know, it's nice. The lore in this though is like pretty cool. Her story in general is really cool. I am a fan of her being in the game in general, even though it is a collab, quote unquote, crossover event. If you get her or not, if you don't want to, but like take a look at her lore, read her profile. It is good stuff. It's interesting. It's well thought out. She's got a fantastic story. It might even convince you to go for her. Like, it's really endearing. I'm not going to spend the time to go through that, because if you don't care about that, then it would be essentially a 3-minute nap for you, right? But as I said, full disclosure, I'm going to be rolling for Kijyo Kōyō. I do like Kijyo Kōyō. The plan for using Kijyo Kōyō is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm going to put her with either Waivers or Merlins or Chen Gongs, and I'm going to go crit the hell out of things. Because with this first skill, the star absorption is strong enough that if I put a 20-30 or something similar onto some support servants and they get any amount of stars above like 15 or 16, she's probably going to crit on at least one card, provided she has 2 cards in the hand, right? If I use this skill and their Buster crit skill, like Chen Gong's for instance, we're getting serious and real damage out of her. Are you going to take her into a challenge quest with those kinds of comps? Not really, unless it's like a Merlin. But in the meantime, she's fun. She's decently strong, provided she has the right supports. If I had to put her on a tier gameplay wise, she's probably like a B-, C+. Honestly, not the strongest in the world. Not exactly middle of the road, because this is a very strong star absorption and she does have a triple Buster deck and she does have the ability to create some stars on that NP with even just a marginal amount of star drop rate up, right? That being said, she's not game breaking. She's not going to turn the tide one way or another for you. Real quick here, let's take a quick look at other similar kits. We mentioned these earlier. We went through Ibaraki's already, but with Lubu, he does have a Star Gather as well. It's 3,000% for one turn. As you saw, hers goes up to 5,000%. I'm not doing a one-to-one comparison to say like this is why you shouldn't roll or this is why you should. It's just an exercise in comparisons for potential alternatives if you are on the fence, right? So Lubu does have Star Absorption as well. He does have triple Buster deck. He also has Ignore Defense on his NP with the same scaling. Obviously not the same stats due to being a 3-star. On his other skills, he does have Attack Up at 9 to 27%. For level 7, for all intents and purposes, is going to be about the same as what you'll get out of her NP. And then level 10 is going to be when you'll surpass her second overcharge, which is where her second skill comes into play. This second skill, 15 to 25%, is a 5-turn cooldown. The offensive buff success rate is dumb. It's not fun. But like, whatever. I guess if you really need to survive, then you can hope that this will work. Anyway, it's whatever. Just don't use the skill. 15 to 25% on his defense up for 3 turns. If you remember hers, it is that 20 to 30% for 3 turns with no demerit on it. And this is a particularly damning demerit. The 2 turns after this, let's say you use an NP or whatever else, this could matter. It probably won't, but it could matter. It could matter, right? You do want to get that Ignore Defense. You do want to get the Attack Up and whatnot going, right? So that being said, from a simple like F2P comparison, Lubu does exist and will give you similar gameplay. He does not have the party-wide heal. He doesn't have the card color up that she has. He can't remove the latest debuff from your party or give them instant kill immunity. So obviously those kind of work in her favor, but she doesn't have Ignore Defense, so potentially a wash either way. Another natural comparison to make is Beowulf here. He has the 20 to 30% steroid on his Attack Up. 10 to 20% on the NP damage up. That's nice little multiplicative damage on his NP. Speaking of which, his NP is very high hit count as well, similar to hers, but he has 12 hits. It has sure hit, and it deals 700 to 1100%, not 600 to 1000, so that's significant. And then the overcharge is almost completely useless on Beowulf. Reducing critical attack chains for 3 turns it's whatever. It's whatever. But going on up here into his second skill, the star gain, in my opinion, this basic form of it was far weaker than just the star gain from her NP, provided you gave even a marginal amount of star drop to her, or had someone providing stars a la Merlin NP or Craft Essence, right? The upgrade on this doesn't change much from the star perspective, but it is a significant boost otherwise. 3,000 to 5,000% on the star absorption. That's what she has as well for 1 turn. But he also has crit damage up 30 to 50%. She does not have crit damage up. On his third skill, it went from the standard battle continuation that we all got bored with, 750 to 2,000 HP, into a crit damage up 30 to 50%. Again, that's massive. He does have the very strong star absorption. He also has crit damage up on this skill. So 50% here, and then over on this third skill, another 50%. Again, that's massive. 3-turn dragon and giant damage niche. I know Beowulf is not high on a lot of people's tier lists as far as their own personal favorite servants. I'm not referencing like an official tier list or anything, but just for like a lot of players, they don't really think about Beowulf as like a go-to, right? And I don't blame them for that. His madness enhancement shouldn't even exist. It's 1%. That being said, there are some similarities here. If you do have a Beowulf, especially if they're like NP2 or something like that, there's not really a reason for you to go after Kijyo unless you like Kijyo. And as we all know, the best reason to roll for any servant in FGO, do you like them? Yes, go for them. Go for it. Why not, right? Ultimately, it's your game, it's your roster. Use who you like if you can. So, those are some natural comparisons. Again, we looked at Ibaraki as well. But long story short on Kijyo, fun design, fun servant. You will be seeing her in a challenge quest in about a little over a year. It's a fun challenge quest. But is she going to like change the trajectory or the actual power of your account? Probably not. Can you get something similar to her from friend point perspective? Yes, you can. Lubu exists. Are they identical? No, but you know, it's similar enough to say that she's not necessarily going to be high on the recommendation list for rolling. But again, full disclosure, I will be rolling for her just to get a copy of her on my main account because I think she's fun, and it's going to be fun to crit things with a dinosaur. Hey, why not? Plus, I typically roll for craft essences anyway. So that is Kijyo Kōyō in a nutshell. Up next, we have probably a more interesting kit perspective servant, and this is Voyager. Voyager is a 5-star foreigner. AoE, quick, 5 hits on the NP, damage to all enemies. There's a lot to this NP, so we're going to go through it first. So Voyager does 5 hits on his NP, damage to all enemies, 600 to 1,000%, 150% extra damage to enemies with the Sky attribute. He then charges the party's NP gauge by 20% and then further by 10%. Of note, in that living human category that gets the further 10% is Miyu Edelfelt. So Miyu Edelfelt is a living human who can do an extremely impressive comp with Voyager. It is basically an infinite NP comp. It's impressive to see. You are not dependent on much else other than them constantly NPing and using skills, but it's satisfying. So that, weirdly enough, is enough of a draw for me to go get Voyager for my quick account that does have Miyu Edelfelt on it, and try to get that kind of comp going. It's going to be a lot of fun. But as we step back from that NP, which does again have a lot to it, not to mention the NP damage up for 1 turn activating first at 20% for single overcharge. As we step back from that, let's see like how the rest of his kit plays into this. So Poco Loco, thanks for the follow, thanks for being here. On his active skills, 30 to 50% battery, that's massive, that's huge. He gives himself debuff immunity for 3 turns, again, that's massive. The 10-star gain is weak in my opinion. It should have been 15 at least. But it is what it is. This is a very, very, very strong skill. It's going to be the first one that you're going to want to upgrade. Again, 30 to 50%, and then debuff immunity for 3 turns. That's really good. Really good. On the second skill, it's a 1-turn evade and then quick resistance up for 3 turns. Sorry, quick performance up. I read that wrong. Quick performance up for 3 turns at 10 to 20%, and then interestingly, 1 enemy's quick resistance down for 10 to 20%. In the game's damage algorithm, those are additive. So essentially, if you're doing a single target fight with Voyager, you have 40% quick up for himself. That's how it works out. If you're doing farming, this second part is essentially wasted. If you are 3-turn farming with Voyager, this is essentially wasted. It's a sad truth, but like this, there's no realm in which you want to use this on the first turn, and also will need this more than the second 2 waves. Like, that doesn't really make any sense to me. But again, there are situations in which it could be nice to have. Maybe there's a challenge quest in which it has one particularly strong enemy, and maybe a mob of others who are not as strong. I don't know. On the third skill, it's 1 ally's critical star absorption for 1 turn. There's a reason we have not looked at his star absorption yet. 1 ally star absorption for 1 turn, 300 to 600%. Crit damage up for the party, 20 to 30%, not bad. And then party's critical attack chance resistance for 3 turns, 10 to 20%. That's a waste in my opinion. This is by far the weakest skill, by far. The 300 to 600% star absorption and the 20 to 30% crit damage are fine. They're okay. This to me is not really an SSR skill, especially not a limited SSR skill. We talked several weeks ago about what that means. What do we mean when we say like this isn't an SSR or a limited SSR skill? The first one that came to mind was Tamamo Summer's 3rd skill. Obviously that got a massive buff, but that was the quintessential example of this is not a limited SSR skill. Obviously this 3rd skill on Voyager is not quite as bad. It's not down in the doldrums like that one was, but it's not good. It should be stronger. The features of it are enough to keep it usable, but it should be stronger. It should be stronger. So if this were to get a buff, I would not be surprised in the future. Honestly, it kind of deserves it. So the 300 to 600% star absorption matters because as a foreigner with a 153 star absorption, that is more than enough. That is more than enough. So for scale purposes, 153 star absorption is probably about 75th percentile in the game, give or take. The highest you'll see in the game is basically 209, I think. Ozzy has 209. There may be someone higher. But 209 is about the highest you'll see. So he's firmly right about 75% of the way there. That's very good, especially considering that you're most often going to see Voyager in either a double Scotty or perhaps a Wu Zetian supported comp. So 153 as a star absorption is good. It's very, very good. So he doesn't need a ton of star absorption here, but it makes the critical damage buff a little bit more disappointing because rather than having the party's critical damage upped by 20 to 30%, which is not nearly as beneficial as the potential alternative, why not give him 30 to 50% self-critical damage up? He's going to be the one critting. He has very strong star weight. He has even better star weight when using this for that single turn. So for the other turns, or even just a single turn crit damage up, why not give him a better steroid? Because he's going to be the one that has the stars. So that's one thing that about as far as his kit goes, I really do wish they would buff. It wouldn't have to be a major buff. It doesn't have to be like a big splash for it to be an effective buff. But this is one that would make a lot of sense. It'd make a lot of sense. His passives as a extra class are interesting. Buff removal resist is baked into his kit at 10%. Is that enough to turn the tide one way or another? Maybe not, but maybe it is as well. He does gain 2 crit stars every turn because he's a foreigner outside the domain. Debuff resist up 6%, and then crit damage up 8% and arts performance 8%. If anything, the crit damage up 8% even more so makes me wish that this was a personal crit damage steroid rather than a weaker party crit damage steroid, right? We talked about the NP. How does all of this kind of factor together? So when you're looking at a 5-hit quick NP, the potential for stars is definitely there. It's going to be nice to have that third skill tucked in your back pocket if you need to crit with him on like the third wave or something like that. He does have a 50% battery. That's nice. The debuff immunity is also nice. The quick performance is a little bit trivial. It's a little bit small. Not the strongest that you'll see in a limited SSR, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It helps. Going on down, from a material perspective, I've talked about this in the past. One reason I'm a fan of players rolling for extra class servants is the material requirements. Voyager is an exception. Voyager is an exception. So typically when we look at foreigners, the materials can either be just like very attractive or very alienating. For me personally, Voyager's expensive, right? So for Ascension mats, 10 Comet Shards, that's a little bit much, not to mention 10 gold mats on his second and third Ascension as well. 10 seashells perhaps is even more painful, especially if you are a summer roller like I am. That's a lot, dude. So after enough time in the game, 10 Black Beast Grease and 10 of the Scarabs are not going to be terrible. 10 of these, if you farm Shinjuku or completed it, is not going to be terrible as well, the Spinal Fluid. But the last tier here, the Comet Shards and the Shells, that's rough. There's no matter how you look at it, that's expensive. Simply for an Ascension, that's a lot, right? So then we go down to the kit, and then we need to weep in a corner. Oh my goodness. So on the skills, it's reasonable up until like skill level 4, right? Maybe 5. So going from skill level 1 to 2, 10 gears, on up from there, Spinal Fluid, bullets, soaps, sorry, steals. Not the worst thing, right? That's not egregious. And then it immediately catapults into a series of Lost Belt gold materials that you will need in the double digits. I'm speaking, of course, about Lost Belt 3, Reactor Cores 12 per skill, 15 eggs. Eggs are still a little bit rough for a lot of NA players right now. 15 of an LB5 material right here. It is silver, that doesn't matter, it's still newer. And then 15 Comet Shards, that's rough no matter how you slice it. In addition to the QP requirement for an SSR being what it is. The funny thing is, if you look at Voyager's append skill, it's way more reasonable. It's way more, I don't understand it at all, but it's way more reasonable. Is it easy? No, like you still need 15 of the pomegranates, you still need 15 of the, the rings and 12 seashells. But it's at least more understandable. It's at least more reasonable. The active skill though, this is just rough. There's no two ways about it. And it's honestly enough that like if you're a casual player and you're on the fence about rolling for Voyager, if someone comes into my chat and says, hey Sharkquado, I'm a casual player, but I really like Voyager's design. However, I'm kind of on the fence. Do you think I should roll for an NP1 Voyager as my main farmer? I'm gonna have a little bit of a trouble outright recommending, simply because these are very deep late game NA materials that you need en masse. Just to get the first skill up to level 10 and final ascension, you're gonna need 25 Comet Shards. 25. That's a lot. As you can probably guess, that's a lot. And you do need, you're gonna want this first skill as high as you can get it, right? You're gonna want this 50% battery. Unless you plan on getting an append skill out of him to try and ease up, maybe just go to skill level 6, not run into this right here. That maybe that's what you want to do, I don't know. But you're gonna want this 50% battery, especially for looping purposes. It's really rough. The second skill, honestly, you don't need to max this. If you take it to skill level 6, that's probably fine, especially considering how expensive skill level 7, 8, 9, 10, or sorry, 7, 8, 9 are. And then on the third skill over here, there's really no real reason to take this back or take this past skill level 6, right? So that helps. That helps. Being able to just say, all right, the second skill, the third skill, those can stay at 6. Going from 25% to 30% crit damage with absorption scaling that's not really gonna matter because the star weight is strong enough as it is, that's enough to say, you know what, I'll pump the brakes on the mats. I don't need to go past 6 on the second and third skill. So now it gets a little bit more digestible, right? We still have to go through 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We still have to go through all of these, right? But we don't have to go through 7, 15 golden egg, or 15 eggs, 8, 15 spherical veins, 9, 15 comet shards. You only need to do that for the first skill. I do wholeheartedly recommend that if you are going to roll for Voyager and you are not someone who plans on farming a ton of materials, someone who likes Voyager a lot, then I do wholeheartedly recommend that you do a 10-6-6 or maybe at least 10-4-4, but at least that, and then probably 10-6-6 comp scale or skill comp scaling, right? Like it's not terrible. But if you're going to do all 3, then it gets pretty close to that. It gets pretty close to that. The great thing is, again, this is an AoE. If this were a single target that had this kind of a kit, there's no way I could justify doing this much of a battery and the rest of the utility as well for this kind of a cost, right? There's simply too many other good servants in that niche, right? If we go on down, one of my, I would say more preferred Bond CEs in the game, Voyager's Bond CE, the Titan 3E rocket here. It's just cool art, in my opinion. Not to mention the fact that damage against sky enemies by 20% is a fun niche. Because there are comps that, technically speaking, after like 2 turns, you can just start spamming NPs with him and the supports around him. So like, maybe there's a challenge quest out there or some fight in which this is beneficial and you take it and you have fun with it, yada yada, right? He does have a pretty cool kit. It's not probably as deep as Kijyo's is. He is the first male foreigner added to the game. That's another interesting thing, but he has the lowest attack values of all foreigners. That's why we scroll down here. He has the lowest attack value of all foreigners. That being said, and we've talked about this on this channel in the past, damage is not the weakness of the quick meta. Provided you like have the servants to actually do double Scotty 3-turn farming against standard 3-3-3 nodes or 3-3x nodes, damage is not really going to be a concern, right? Scotty is strong enough on the defense down and the quick up that you're probably gonna be fine damage-wise. However, that's a little bit skewed when it comes to an extra class servant like Voyager, because you're going to be dealing neutral damage most of the time, and this is not a Dante's level, powerhouse attacker, right? So if we were to pull up Dante's, let's go to, oh man. Avenger class here and Dante's here. So if we go to Dante's, obviously like the attack up 30 to 50%. He has a bigger star bomb. He can remove his own debuffs. On his second skill, he has the NP gain I mentioned you'll want with Voyager, right? And then the ease of like getting more NP off of not only the turns but damage as well, and then the defense reduction, like it all helps to do like a little bit more damage, right? You just would really rather have a 30 to 50% attack up, so 50% if you're going to use for 3-turn farming. You really would rather have a 50% attack up rather than a 10 to 20% quick up, you know what I mean? Because after the first wave, this quick resist is gone. It's meaningless. It's absolutely gone. So again, not trying to do a one-to-one comparison, but these are limited AoE quick extra class SSRs that you can use in a double Scotty farming setup. Your damage output for Dante's is just gonna be better. From a stability standpoint, he doesn't have a battery, but he does have the NP gain. It's a pretty healthy 50%, so it's something to think about. Now, that being said, if you don't currently have Dante's, this means nothing. If you don't currently have a Dante's, then this doesn't do jack shit for you, because Dante's is about as limited as it gets nowadays, going forward, right? So, where does that leave Voyager overall? Let's take a look at some of the other foreigners that will factor in potentially into your comps, right? So the first one, the easiest one right now, Hokusai. Hokusai has the exact same star weight. This is a little bit unfair because Hokusai has gotten a ridiculous buff, and Voyager has not, right? So the third skill on Hokusai used to be defense down when using attack or with arts cards, right? When doing that and then adding this to it, star absorption of arts cards and a star quote-unquote bomb at 5 to 15, this is kind of broken. Like, it's really good. Not to mention the star absorption is 3 turns worth, and her NP does have 5 hits, so it's right on that like middle ground as far as like getting some stars to generate if you can give her star gen. But if not, she does have a star bomb, right? On her second skill, arts up 20 to 30%. That outpaces his quick up. Buff removal resist for 1 turn. We know how important that is going forward. It's 100%. That's nice. Debuff resist 100%. That's nice. On the first skill, she also has an evade. She also has a battery. Hers is not as large. So she has star absorb. It's on her arts cards, but that's where you want them anyway. She has a battery. It's not quite 50%, but append skills are a thing. And with that, it'll be more valuable to use an append skill to get from 30% to 50% than it will be to get from 50% to 70%. Just from a CE utility perspective, right? So same evade, similar battery, a little bit less until append skills come. Better card color buff, not to mention buff removal resist and debuff resist. Similar scaling on star absorption. Similar scaling on stars, the ability to reduce defense, which in the game's algorithm is the same as attack up, and then over here, man attribute, so he has a different niche. She has man attribute, he has, I think, sky enemy, right? So that being said, like, it is easy to make those kinds of comparisons between these two. If you like Voyager, this is not going to be enough to tip the scales either way. Hokusai, again, is a very limited servant going forward. Not impossible, there will be banners, but, you know, just not as common, right? So, if you have an Hokusai, especially at NP2, you're not going to look at Voyager and say, I need a Voyager on my team. It's just not going to be there. It's just not going to be there. So that's probably the easiest one-to-one comparison you can make, especially if you already have her. Like, it's gonna kind of work itself out in your own eyes, right? Other than her, we'll take a look at a few others. So Abigail Williams Summer down here. If we look at her kit, it's all enemies defensive buffs removed first. That alone is enough for me to get, or enough for me to roll for Summer Abigail. All enemy defensive buffs will get removed. 300 to 500% NP damage for especially for an extra classic. That's not going to do a whole lot for you. Defense reduction afterward for 3 turns. On the first skill here, she'll make someone asleep for 2 turns, whatever, but she'll remove their buffs. That's the biggest thing. So buff strip on a single target on her first skill. That's nice. It doesn't scale. You just get it. That's really good. The defense down is what scales. That's not bad at all. Terror status, 1 time 3 turns, all enemies is whatever. You know, 30, yeah, it's whatever. It's whatever. But the further defense down, that's good. There's a lot of defense down in this kit, right? And then the third skill here, again, a 30 to 50% battery on Summer Abigail. Again, this is an AoE foreigner. Debuff success rate by 30%. That plays off her second skill. And then Buster resistance down 20 to 30%. Again, if we do a comparison, straight up 10 to 20% quick resistance down for 1 enemy as well here. This is just straight up better. It's just straight up better. Not to mention you're stacking all kinds of defense downs all over the place. What's up, BJ Hoonies? 10 to 20% defense down there. The 30 to 50% 1 attack over 2 turns defense down there, the 20% defense down here. It all adds up. Not to mention her mats are much more accessible on the Ascension, and then still fairly egregious, I'm not gonna lie to you. In fact, probably a little bit worse on the skills. And similar to Voyager, you're gonna want one of these 3 skills maxed out, a 6/6/10. So Summer Abigail here is another easy comp when you go like 1-for-1 wise. No, you're good, Cosmic. Yeah, so a little bit lower star weight, but again, the rest of it kind of shakes out to where if you're not sold on Voyager, Summer Abigail is another strong competitor. Not to mention the fact that the CE on Summer Abigail's banner, Honey Lake, is one of the best CEs you can get from the gacha this year in total. Very, very good CE. From a very, very good servant as well. Again, the ability to strip one enemy's buffs with this skill, not to mention stripping defensive buffs on the NP, the damage is not naturally going to be there. You're going to need some steroids going into it, maybe to stack up some of these defense downs. But the utility more than makes up for it. The utility more than makes up for it. So this is another very viable alternative if you're on the fence about Voyager, right? So we've looked at Hokusai, we've looked at Abigail. Those are 2 of the easiest SSR comparisons to make that either are out or will be out in NA this year. There's a couple others coming that are AoE, they are quick, and they are foreigners. One is a welfare. This is important. So Mysterious Idol X is a welfare that comes out next year. We're about a year away, almost to the dot, give or take a month, for getting Mysterious Idol X, right? She's really fun. She's cool. Voyages, baby. Same star weight. There's a lot of things that are going to be really similar here. The quick up is stronger, though. She also has Buster up. The evade is weaker, so it kind of washes out. The critical damage is much stronger, but as you see on the kit, there's not going to be that little bit of a bump for star absorption that Voyager has. She's got great star absorption anyway at 153, same as him. So it's not necessarily going to break the mold one way or another. But this mechanical damage niche for 3 turns, if I had $1 for every time this mechanical enemy's damage niche has turned the tide of a fight for me, I would have $0. $0. But it's a 4-turn cooldown with a 3-turn effect and a 1-turn critical damage steroid. That's very good. Very, very good. This is a welfare. On the 3rd skill here, party attack 10 to 20%, essentially a wash. The heal, it's whatever. It's whatever. Marginally useful, and a 5-turn cooldown. It is much more difficult to loop with her than it is with Voyager. There is no 50% battery in here. She's good. She's going to be fantastic for a lot of people to get. If you're on the fence, especially if you're free to play about Voyager, look no further. Look no further. Is she a year away? Yes. However, in my opinion, like, this is enough of a consideration to make. Over on the NP, evil alignment does matter a lot. 150% extra damage to them. Damage to all enemies 600 to 1000. And then quick up, this is the big part. The quick up for 1 turn activates first. It's 20% on the NP. There's extra damage there. There's extra damage right here. And there's quick up right here. So 20 to 30% plus another 10% at base overcharge. No, 20% at base overcharge. So you're looking at 50% quick up if you have the first skill and the NP going. You're looking at attack up 10 to 20%. Crit damage is massive. Again, if you're on the fence, there are quick AoE options coming, one of which is going to be free. The other of which is Jacques Demolay. A little bit lower star absorption by 5. Very interesting servant, let's say it like that. I'll try not to spoil a future event. However, an extremely good kit. Extremely good kit. This is a limited SSR AoE quick foreigner as well. So that's why it's important to kind of have like the comparisons go here. Attack up 10 to 20%. Crit damage 20 to 30%. It's for the party on both of those. Party NP gauge 10 to 20%, and then party evil alignment, accept self for 3 turns. Obviously, she already has the evil alignment. That's important because on the second skill, everyone who has the evil alignment is going to get invincible for 1 attack over 1 turn. That can change the tide of a battle. That can absolutely change the tide of a battle. You're talking about surviving an NP where maybe you would not have had a chance to before. 20 to 30% on the NP gauge. Again, we already had 10 to 20% here, so essentially a 50% battery. Going back for one more thing, the party evil alignment accept self is for 3 turns. So you can pop this skill, get the damage steroid going, and then still wait on this second skill for another 2 turns if you need to, right? 6 turn cooldown on the second skill, 6 turn cooldown on the first skill, 5 turns on this final one. Stars every turn, 3 turns, 5 to 10. Quick up, 10 to 20%, should sound familiar. And then increases own damage against enemy with curse status for 3 turns. 30 to 50% extra damage. She inflicts curse on her NP. 1,000 damage, 5 turns. And then evil curse, which increases it by 100%, so you're essentially looking at 2,000 damage for 5 turns. NP damage up for 3 turns activates first. She's very good. She's just very good. Using Jacques Desmoulins on the JP account that we have has been a treat every single time. She was an easy 10-10-10 for me, no doubt about it, and she's paid dividends. However, the materials start to rear their head at a higher level. Not so much at the lower on the skills, but definitely at the upper end, it gets a little bit steep. But by the time she's out, this doesn't matter as much. By the time she is out, this does not matter quite as much. Same with the final ascension. You are not expected to pay this price right now on her. When it comes to Jacques Desmoulins' release, we are like a year and 6 months. Maybe a year and 5 months. She's very far away. Very far away. She will be Halloween next year. So, when it comes to a comparison between the materials here, if I'm looking at these and I'm saying, hey, 10 comet shards for ascension there, 10 there, 10 shells there, 10 eggs there, 15 comet shards on a skill down there, 15 eggs, 15 spiracles, 15 eggs, 15 comet shards, yada yada. It does make a difference that she is going to be a much, much, much later price to pay if you are looking to take a quick AoE limited SSR up to 10-10-10 or 10XX, right? She, however, does need to be 10-10-6. You could take her to 10-10-10 and it would make a lot of sense. But you're gonna want her 10-10-6. Whereas Voyager needs to be 10-6-6 for his efficiency to really shine, right? All in all, there are viable alternatives to Voyager. If you are not on like a sold completely 100%, I'm gonna go for this guy track, then you can have a similar servant, a similar capability in the future. I'm talking about quick AoE, I'm talking about foreigner AoE. There are other options out there, some of which, objectively speaking, are probably going to be considered stronger. One of which already has a very, very good buff on her 3rd skill. Now that being said, Voyager is no slouch. He's not bad at all. He's not going to like change the tide of your account once again, just like Kijyo. But he is fun. Once again, if you're rolling for Voyager, just like if you're rolling for Kijyo, there's a pretty good chance that you're rolling for the character and not for the kit. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Fantastic art, fantastic servant design, pretty solid lore. Honestly, if you've read Fate Requiem, Voyager is kind of cool. Even though like he's a kid, he's I'm not gonna spoil a lot of things, but he's a satellite, etc., etc. Voyager's kind of cool in Fate Requiem in the volumes, so you're probably not rolling for Voyager for gameplay reasons. Same with Kijyo Kōyō. If you do roll for Voyager, again, just like Kijyo Kōyō, with the right setup around them, they will shine. They'll do the job. They'll do it well. They can get you some crits. They can get you some utility across your party. They'll do the job, you know? And these are not bad servants by any stretch of the imagination. Voyager, for my money, is going to be probably a B servant. I did put Kijyo at like a B minus C plus. That first skill of his is it's impressive. 30 to 50% debuff immune for 3 turns. The stars or whatever. If you're walking into a lot of different quests and you don't know what you're going against, or you kind of know, and it could be a more challenging farming node, perhaps even like a lottery, where they can get kind of high in the HP, so you may need to phase card once or twice. This could be a viable option for you to really get carried through without gathering a lot of baggage, right? The debuff immunity is nice. The 30 to 50% battery is very nice. I do wish this skill were a little bit stronger, and I do wish this skill were a lot of bit stronger. It wouldn't take much. Again, just make this own crit damage up and make it maybe 30 to 50% at the least, right? Preferably 50 to 100%. And then the second skill, just double these, right? It's not difficult, you know? Or take this out and make this doubled. That's not even, technically speaking, a buff for a single wave, but it is for the further 2 waves, you know? It's little things like that that would really help Voyager out. You will be seeing me get Voyager on my quick account, hopefully. You will be seeing me use the infinite NP comp with Voyager and double Miyu on my quick account. We'll be doing that on stream. It's going to be fun. All in all, Fate Requiem is an interesting event. I will probably do a separate video on the welfare if I am asked to. If I am not, I will not. Because the welfare, I'm just going to be 100% blunt with you right now, is not someone you're going to see used on a very widespread amount going forward, question mark. Welfare Lancers are not exactly rare in the game going forward, and also currently with Kagetora, but Utsumi is just not really somebody to call home about. I could even do like a quick little segment here, but anyway, so that is Kijyo Kōyō, that is Voyager. Feel free to let me know in the comments below what you plan or don't plan to roll. If you see this as your last best banner before you save for Castoria, if you see this as a banner you've been looking forward to for a long time, I want to hear about it. And feel free to let me know otherwise as well. If you have no plans on these servants, if you don't like them, if whatever it is, if you've read Requiem, all of the above. So feel free to let me know. No matter what though, thanks for watching. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe button once again, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.